Thank you for joining us today. Lovely. I'll just ask that everybody, keeps your microphone on mute, but we do have a chat function, so you can write any and all of your questions in the chat box, but we will ask you to keep anything that's really specific to your own personal circumstances just to the side, maybe if you've got a notebook or something, and then when you have a call with us, we can talk more through those personal questions at that time. So we will try and get to as many questions as possible in the chat today. But you can put those through as we speak, but if it gets answered during the presentation, then at the end, if it's still a burning question, feel free to ask at the end as well. Alrighty, I can see people are filling up, which is very nice. Might wait just a couple more moments before we really get started today, just to see if others are going to sort of jump in. Okay.
Hopefully it's not too rainy of a Wednesday for everybody. I know it's not been the best weather here in Wales today, but I know Australia's getting sunny at this point. It's lovely springtime weather for them.
Very true. Alrighty. Okay. I just wait a tad bit more. Right. Nice to see some familiar names in the list as well. That's really lovely to see. Awesome. Okay. And just a reminder as well, like at the end of the presentation today, we will also have a link there so that you can, put in your expression of interest and sign up and get that sort of personal one-on-one call with one of us or maybe one of our colleagues as well out of the London office.
Yeah, we'll be sending out the recording of this to everybody either tomorrow or Friday, kind of depends on how long the link transfers over for the video recording. But we will be sending this email to everybody afterwards, so feel free to kind of review that information later on if you need to.
Alrighty, we might get started. So my name is Jasmine. Thank you again, everybody, for joining us this evening. I'm a consultant on the global team based out of London, and I myself am also an educator, originally from sunny Queensland. And my colleague is also joining us today out of the Wales office. Korri is also a global consultant on our team, and it's always really nice when we get to do this together because we don't always see each other every day.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm based in Wales. I'm from Canada myself. I came over to the UK as a teaching assistant in Bristol and Wales. And yeah, excited to be joining you guys today.
Alrighty, so we're going to be covering off quite a few bits and pieces today, but like I said, if you've got any burning questions, make sure you add them to the chat as we go. So we'll introduce you to ANZ UK and how we are as a company. We'll chat a little bit about why we think moving overseas is an amazing opportunity, why we think you should all do it, but I'm guessing that a lot of you already think that that's something you want to do, which is why you've joined us today. And then we look through different types of work that's available down under in both Australia and New Zealand, the different teaching registration processes, and of course, different kinds of support that ANZ UK can offer. And then there'll be time again at the end for questions.
Fantastic. So to get straight into it, a little bit about ANZ UK and who we are as a global company. So ANZ UK has been in operation for 20 years, actually 2024 was our anniversary. And we do have offices all across the globe. So obviously, you mentioned that Jasmine's in London. I'm in our Wales office, but we do have offices across Australia, New Zealand. We have a team in Canada who unfortunately don't have local opportunities, but they do send educators over here as well. And we are connected with a team in the US as well. We do have 300 staff globally. We do support you on a 360 capacity as well. So obviously our end here on the global team, we help you get to Australia. We help you prepare before you get on the plane. We get you over there, get you working with the team locally. And then if you do want opportunities on your way back as well, there is a global team based in Australia and New Zealand who can support you on your return journey as well. So lovely 360 support. And we are a completely free service to use as well. We don't charge our educators anything along the way, no fees, nothing like that involved. We are educator forward, so don't have to worry about that. A little bit about our promise as well. We do really embody our Be Great values. So you can see what Be Great stands for there on the side. And we bring that into obviously our local offices and who we are as a team working together, but also how we support our educators and how we put our educators in the best possible position for the right opportunities for them. We really do focus on exceptional experiences. We do want it to be a very personalized, customized experience for you. We want to make sure that your journey is what you want it to look like. And our whole motto is right educator, right place, right time. So we're going to do our best to support you in finding the opportunities that are going to suit you best, and are going to kind of go along with your journey, but also what we think we can do on our end to make sure it's the right fit for you along the way.
Awesome. So that brings us nicely into why we think you should teach abroad. So as somebody who has made the journey myself, I was an educator based out of Queensland, a secondary music teacher, and then I made the leap to sort of teach abroad in Japan. And for me, that was a huge stepping out of comfort zone, being exposed to different cultures, sometimes different languages, and just that general experience of living abroad in another country away from your family and friends is a really huge growth experience, both personally but also professionally. There's so many things to learn about different curriculums, different settings, as well as the huge life experience, making some amazing memories, meeting some different people to what you would normally meet every day in your hometown. And it makes you really employable when you do choose to return, if you choose to return, because we know that some of our educators made the move more permanently to Australia because they loved it so much. And certainly, I think it's a really amazing opportunity. And part of the reason why I took this role in ANZUK Education. And I think that when partnering with us, we really put the educator at the forefront. So your experience is really important to us because we know that if teachers are happy, if teachers are in the right place, they are the best fit for the students, and we're going to have really happy kids and really happy schools. Okay, so making the transition. There's three really key parts to your planning that will make this transition really smooth for you. So the first one there is the right to work. So when you do go to Australia or New Zealand, you will need a visa to have working rights in those countries. There's a few different visa types. But I must say that because we aren't migration agents or immigration lawyers, we can't advise you personally on which visa to take. But we do actually partner with some migration agents, both for Australia and New Zealand. So if that's an option that you need to take, then we can support you by putting you in touch with them. But a lot of our educators do choose to go out on working holiday visas to both New Zealand and Australia. There are also skilled worker options, and in a really exciting thing for New Zealand this year, they've actually announced a few different visa options specifically for teachers, in particular offers that can lead straight to residency, which is very exciting. And then, of course, Australian or New Zealand passport will also give you full working rights in both countries. So if you have a long lost Aussie relative or New Zealand relative, you might be able to get yourself an Australian passport. So do sort of look into the family tree a little bit there. In terms of qualifications, in Australia, they will expect 4 years of tertiary study across all of the states to be eligible for teaching registration. And one of those years at least must have been dedicated to teaching education. And then as part of that teaching education year, you must have spent about 45 days or more in the university supervised in-school placements. So it's really important there that it is fully supervised whilst you are at school. And then the final piece there that will help make that transition a little bit easier is making sure that you understand the ins and outs of teaching registration. So we will guide you through that process. That is probably the biggest hurdle for a lot of educators, is trying to understand, the different sort of paperwork and processes for different places. So we will make that part easy for you. But it is really key that in both Australia and in New Zealand, you must hold teaching registration to be able to teach in schools.
Yeah, and on that note as well, if you do hold a different type of teaching qualification, say if it was a SKIT-directed PGCE or Teach First, Schools Direct, anything like that, we do really recommend booking in a call with us as early in advance. Now, we obviously cannot guarantee whether you will or will not be registered with whichever state or location you are going to, but we can try and give you as much information in advance to make sure that you are meeting those kind of requirements by the state and kind of give you any kind of guidance that we can on that end. Now, as for those working options, what are the actual types of roles that we have available in each location? What do they mean? So we do have two different types of roles that we really mainly focus on, and a lot of our educators traveling over for the first time do go for the casual roles to begin with. Really great opportunity to find your feet in your new location. It gives you the chance to trial out different schools so that you can see what all of the different settings look like. Really great learning opportunity for you, especially when you're kind of taking this year or couple of years to try something new and expand your own teaching career. It does give you a better idea of what's all out there. Now, the starting rate is actually quite good in whichever location you do go to. If you are going to Australia, the starting rate is around 410 Australian dollars a day. I think that's at the moment around the £200 mark. New Zealand is actually determined by the country that you're going to, so by New Zealand's Qualification Assessment Authority. They will give you your range, but it does start around the 310 or 320 New Zealand dollar range. And early childhood is its own kettle of fish. If you are working with ages 0 through 5 in any kind of nursery setting, they do have their own rates depending on which type of position you hold, but the very minimum would be about $36 an hour. And of course, goes up with experience and depends on what kind of roles you're holding as well. Now, casual work does not mean that you are only going to be getting one day here or there. It doesn't mean that you have to go searching for your own roles. We sort that all out for you. We do have a collection of schools who come to us and rely on us for kind of day-to-day roles, but also a lot of the time those schools will use casual opportunities as a way of finding the right educator for a long-term role. So it can be a really great way to start relationships, build networks, connect with different schools, find your favorites, do a little bit of cherry picking, and it can turn to longer term roles in the future as well. Really great way to shop around. Um, or if you do want to stay on a casual capacity the whole time, if you're only there for about, a year, maybe even less, and you just want to do bits and pieces of work while you're there to kind of keep your bank account going, absolutely a great opportunity. It gives you the chance to be able to book days off wherever you need to. Now, if you are going on more of a contract basis, there are different kind of opportunities for more permanent roles depending on where you do go. Our team, our global team does have a permanent opportunities team member named Stana. She is specialized for long-term roles, especially for our secondary educators. But we can support with CV and interview support, so we can get you all set up, make sure that you are as prepared as possible before we do put you in front of those schools. We can we can arrange for interviews before you arrive, so you can do some interviews from at home in the UK or Ireland, as well as having teams on the ground who can support you if you do want to consider contract opportunities down the line as well. Now, if you're going to Australia, they're most readily available for secondary and SEN teachers. But not to say that we can't get primary roles as well. They're just a little bit harder to find in certain areas, so it kind of depends where you're going. And if you are going to New Zealand, they are very readily available for primary teachers, first of all, as well as secondary and SEN teachers as well. And EC roles we can find wherever you go.
Lovely. So let's start talking about some of those different locations that you might be able to teach in when you go to Australia or New Zealand. So the first one, and possibly the most popular one, is Melbourne, which is in the state of Victoria. And there's a few reasons for this. Now, you'll see at the bottom the Victorian Institute of Teaching. That is what you will apply for to get your teaching registration. And this is a really big draw because you can apply before you get there. So that means that not only can you have all of your sort of packing and all that kind of stuff done, you can actually have your teaching registration done so that when you land, if you so choose, you could go to a school the very next day and start teaching immediately. So it's a really big draw, especially if you're short on time, if you're wanting to hit the ground running and do a nice chunk of work when you first arrive. This is a really great option. The other reason why it's a great option is because you can do the pre-assessment, which is the first part of your teaching registration process. You can do that at any time. So you don't need flights booked, you don't need a visa. You can straight away submit the documents that you have to check if your qualification is likely to receive teaching registration in the state of Victoria. So you can check that even if you wanted to right now and be like, great, they've said yes. So later on, when I'm ready to go, I can then apply for my teaching registration. So that is a nice piece of certainty, especially when you're planning to move to the other side of the world. Now, the different work opportunities that we have in Melbourne are day-to-day supply, or we call that CRT, casual relief teaching, as Corey just mentioned before. And we have that throughout the city of Melbourne, but we've also got that in Geelong as well. But a key difference is in Melbourne, we have some really great public transport links, but in Geelong, it is quite necessary to have a car. So it will depend on where you get based as well. And then, of course, in Melbourne, we also have contracts and permanent opportunities. We've got EC, early childhood, and we also have TA opportunities. So a really great option if you don't have your teaching qualifications yet, or you're not going to go through and get your teaching registration, but you still want to work in schools while you're in Australia. SEN TA roles are available in Melbourne and are a great option there. We also have work opportunities out of Geelong, very similar there to Melbourne, but there's less demand for your casual relief teaching. And we have some pretty great draw cards with our regional opportunities, although these are more readily available for people that have full working rights or on PR visas, for example. But a good one to keep there up your sleeve as well, especially if you intend to stay more long term.
Fantastic. So with the timeline for Victoria, what we do say, try and make sure that you have your plans ready to go about 3 months before you arrive, because the VIT can take around 4 weeks per each part of the application. So it's good to be planning this about 3 months before you go. Now, very similar and also very popular is going to be New South Wales. A lot of our educators do love Sydney. It's basically the London of Australia at this point. And it is a great option to go to, especially if you are thinking a little bit more casual. So again, very similar to what's available in Melbourne and Greater Victoria. We do have casual roles available, so that's CRT, which is a great way to start out, especially if you're going to be traveling a bit. We do have short-term and long-term contracts as well, so it could be a term in length, it could be 2 terms, it could be year-long opportunities or ongoing as well. And these are available for the whole works, early childhood, primary educators, SEN educators as well. Now, these are going to be most readily available, again, for secondary and SEN teachers, but there are also contracts available that do come up, especially through the CRT route for those primary educators as well. Now, the public transport is pretty good in Sydney. It's not quite as good as Melbourne, but it is quite reliable. Most of our educators do rely on that public transport to get around, but we do have certain neighborhoods where we recommend you being based in so that it's more readily accessible. A lot of the schools and working opportunities are going to be more out in the western suburbs rather than in the eastern suburbs, which are very popular to move to. I know everybody wants to be along the beach, but it's just a good idea to base yourself near a train station wherever you're going to be. Now, regionally outside of Sydney, so anywhere from kind of 2 hours and further away from the city, we do also have contracts and permanent opportunities available for both primary and secondary educators. And there are short-term contracts available for working holiday visa holders, which is especially a draw if you are a primary educator and you want to be working regionally. There are certain opportunities that might pop up for you that we can kind of arrange in advance or once you've arrived as well. So it's really handy. Now, one thing to point out with New South Wales, it is the only state at this point that does require you are physically on the ground to start your registration process. So that is going to be NESA, that's mentioned there at the bottom, so the New South Wales Education Standard Authority. Now, you can collect all of your documentation before you leave. We highly recommend doing so because it does speed up the process by quite a bit. But you do need to be aware that you have to be on the ground in Australia and complete certain steps to be able to even start your registration application, which does mean that it could be 4 to even 8 weeks to process the whole thing. If you do have certain other types of alternative qualifications, it could take longer yet to gain other types of documentation as well. This does mean that you'd be waiting at least a month to be able to start teaching. So if you are thinking of going and having a long-term contract that you want to start at the beginning of term 1 in 2026, you need to be arriving early enough so that you can have your registration granted so you can actually start that teaching role at the end of January.
Yes, and important to note that in both New South Wales and Victoria, if you're wanting to be there when it's really busy for especially that CRT, that day-to-day, it's busiest from March, which is partway or towards the end of term 1, through to October. So at the end of term 3, beginning of term 4 in Australia. So it is really important to factor in the processing time for New South Wales, for Sydney, and or Melbourne as well into your plans when you're heading out. Now, on to Queensland, the Sunshine State, and where I was teaching. Now, Brisbane is a little bit different to Victoria and New South Wales in that we don't really have any casual or day-to-day opportunities in this state. It's much more focused on contracts and permanent opportunities. So we do have term-by-term contracts for our working holiday visa holders. So just remembering as well that if you're on the working holiday visa, the most amount of time you can spend in one of our schools or in one job is 6 months. So usually these contracts are singular terms or maximum 2 terms, and then we will need to put you in another school to make sure that you are not in breach of that visa condition. But if you're on a PR visa or you've got full working rights because you have an Australian or New Zealand passport available to you, then this can be a really great place to go because we do have those longer term opportunities. And especially, same as the other 2 states, if you have a STEM teaching area. So there's a lot of demand in that as well. And of course, Queensland being such a huge state, the second largest, we have so many regional opportunities. I actually spent some time myself teaching up in Cairns, which is about halfway up the state and a couple of days drive from my parents' place. But it is a beautiful part of the world, and I highly recommend if the coastal lifestyle is for you, if you love the summer sunshine, and make that all year round, then maybe that's a really good opportunity for yourself. But in all of our locations in Queensland, you must have a car. Now, the QCT or Queensland College of Teachers is where you would be getting your teaching registration from. And please note, it does take up to 12 weeks to process. So making sure that you have all of your documentation ready from the get-go to avoid any delays in the process is really important. And please also note there that it must be mailed. So that also can affect processing times, and especially depending on the time of year. I know that right now, if you were to probably send it right now, it might get mixed up in all of Santa's, Christmas requests and postcards and such. So do sort of take into consideration when posting an application, it will add to that sort of processing time as well.
Amazing. One nice thing about the QCT, though, that I will mention as well, is they are the one kind of area where if you do have a contract lined up and your QCT is already in process, that school might be able to nudge the QCT and ask for it to be processed a little bit quicker. So it doesn't necessarily have to take the full 12 weeks, but we do recommend as soon as you have your visa granted, get your QCT submitted because it does speed up the whole process and really helps with you getting started as quick as possible. Amazing. Now, very similar to the types of opportunities that we have in Queensland, we're going to talk about Western Australia and South Australia. So Perth over there in Western Australia and Adelaide in the south. Now, they have very similar opportunities to each other. It is mostly going to be on a contract and permanent opportunities basis, same as Queensland. Those states don't really have as much of a culture for the casual roles, and the government does kind of deal with a little bit more of that side. So that's where the agencies like ourselves don't really have as much access to those day-to-day roles in those states. There is a secondary focus in these locations as well. So again, any type of secondary subject is fine. STEM, obviously, you can go wherever you like. You'll be fine no matter which location you choose. But these opportunities, or these locations, I should say, do also have primary available, but on a more limited capacity. It's especially helpful if you do have a long-term visa option. So a skilled worker visa, for example, would mean that you'd have the ability to be in a contract for a year or longer. So that is going to be a little bit more easily placed for those primary educators as well. Now, we do highly recommend having a car available in these locations as well. I don't know about you, but Australia is big. It is not quite the same as over here. I'm from Canada. We're used to having to drive everywhere as well. It's the same kind of deal over there as well. You do have to be aware of a 40-minute commute being absolutely nothing to them. So do have a car available to you if you're going here. And we do have early childhood opportunities available in these two states as well as Queensland on the casual, contract, and permanent basis. So if you are an early childhood educator, you can go to any of these locations and do those casual roles or contract roles as well. It's all available to you. Now, the teaching registration processes for both states are fairly similar, and they do have very similar names. So for Western Australia in particular, you can apply for it before you do go. As soon as your visa is granted, you can submit that application from abroad. It does take, though, a full 10 weeks to process, and unfortunately, there isn't a fast track option for this state. It does take a full 10 weeks. So we really recommend applying in advance. There is a working with children check to obtain once you're on the ground, kind of like getting a DBS or a vetting card while you're over here as well, but it only takes about a week or two to come back as well. Now, the TRBSA is a little bit different. It's kind of a combination between Perth and Queensland. So you do actually have to mail in some of your documents again, but give or take the mailing time, it does only take about 6 weeks to process. So it's not too bad. Again, with any of these, we do recommend as soon as your visa is granted to hit submit on that application for Queensland, Western Australia, or South Australia.
Alrighty. So New Zealand. Now, some of you may not have considered New Zealand as an option before, but we have a lot of people who go over and really enjoy teaching in Australia, and they don't really want to return home just yet, and they head out to New Zealand before heading home. But if you like New Zealand, it might be actually your number one choice. So let's talk about the opportunities that we have over there. Now, in the North Island, we've got Auckland and Wellington, and these two main cities are probably the biggest draw card there for especially primary opportunities. So while some parts of Australia are a little bit limited in the primary opportunities, we have lots of primary opportunity in Auckland and Wellington. So a really good place to go both for your casual or contract and permanent opportunities in primary. Of course, we also have secondary SEN roles and early childhood as well in those locations. Then in Christchurch and more regionally, so thinking about sort of more regional areas in South and North Islands, we do have contracts and perm opportunities, but they are not coming up as frequently as they are in Auckland and Wellington, just because they are a little bit more sparse. So it's really important as well that when we're having this conversation, when we're planning your journey, that we can start looking as early as possible if you know that you're interested in a regional area. Now, some very exciting opportunities in New Zealand because there's a few different visa types that have been announced this year. We sort of mentioned those before, but we also can get a working holiday visa, and that doesn't have the 6-month rule in place like it does in Australia. So even if you go across on the working holiday visa, you are able to take on a year-long contract or a permanent opportunity in New Zealand. Just be aware that it does take a little bit longer for the working holiday to be processed if you are heading out to New Zealand. And generally speaking, the process for getting registered as a teacher in New Zealand takes longer as well. So if you are considering New Zealand as an option for you, then please make sure you book in that call with us as soon as possible. We are seeing that to get all the documentation and all the application in, it takes about 4 to 5 months. So reaching out 6 or preferably earlier, 6 to 8 months earlier, if possible, so that we can make sure that you've got everything in place and that you have the job opportunities to go to when you arrive. Now, the NZQA and registration processes in New Zealand is a 4-step process, but generally speaking, the NZQA part of this process can take up to 10 weeks, and there's a few different costs involved, both with getting your registration as well as getting a salary assessment done as well. So make sure that when you have the call with us, that you understand fully the costs associated with this. Just like in Australia, every state has a slightly different process. There are different costs involved. So making sure that we're able to sort of step you through that process and you're aware of that beforehand is, I think, best.
Amazing. Brilliant. So the academic year and a breakdown of what that calendar actually looks like. So as Jasmine did mention, our casual opportunities do kind of have a arc throughout the year. Essentially, as a rule of thumb, the closer that you are to the Christmas/summer holidays, the quieter it is going to be for working opportunities. And it's the same kind of thing over here in the UK and Ireland. If it's kind of June and July time, it's going to be pretty quiet. If it's September, it's also pretty quiet. So think of that in a flipped capacity for Australia and New Zealand. For term one, the work doesn't really start up until about the middle or kind of later part of February. So the first 3 to 4 weeks can be very, very quiet. It does start to build up, but I would say anticipate between 2 to 4 days of work per week. It's not likely to be full-time work straight away, especially if you've only arrived in the last 2 months before that and you really haven't had much opportunity to go into schools at that point just yet. If you're a first-time educator working in Australia or New Zealand in that kind of February period, it is going to be a little bit quiet to begin with. So just keep that in mind. It will pick up though in term two especially. So kind of after Easter break all the way up until July is term two. One of the busier times of year, really fantastic time to get more of those longer term opportunities going. So if you can be working 5 days a week at that point, it is more available. There are block opportunities, so you could be casual, but you could be within the same school for a couple of weeks at a time as well. Or those schools might also kind of have you come on more of a contract basis for terms 2 and 3 as well. Term 3, again, very similar. So all the way up until October is typically very, very busy. April to October, just keep that in mind. If you are arriving in that time as well, it applies to you too. You don't have to have that kind of 3 months of experience behind you to get the full-time work straight away. There is going to be full-time work available pretty much when you hit the ground. Term 4 is kind of the opposite of term 1. It does start out stronger, where October can be quite consistent. But as we get closer to exam season in the middle of November, as we get closer to Christmas, things are going to get quiet. So it might not be 5 days the whole month or the whole term. It is going to creep down kind of 4, 3, 2 as we get closer to Christmas time as well. Now, contracts can come up any time of year. I know a lot of people do come to us thinking that they're only going to get a contract starting in January. That is not the case. They do come up at the beginning of every term as well as throughout the term. So if you're going to somewhere like Queensland, a lot of the opportunities do start kind of at the beginning. Melbourne is going to have contracts that might start in the middle as well. It kind of depends where you're going and what subjects you teach as well. But they are available anytime. Does not have to be January. And as just kind of, I know we've been banging on about this a lot, but as a reminder, always factor in the teaching registration to when you'll be wanting to start teaching. If you are getting to Sydney in August thinking that you want full-time work straight away, just anticipate that you're not actually going to start teaching until October. So kind of plan that in advance. If you're arriving in November in Sydney, you're not going to be starting to teach until the actual next academic year. Always just keep these things in mind as well.
And I think it's worth noting at this point that when you have a conversation with us, your own call, we actually help you make this travel plan. So we'll discuss those different options. We'll also signpost for you when to have your application in by for teaching registration, when it would be a really good idea to maybe arrive, or if you are traveling, we can find some workarounds. If you're coming in, maybe you can arrive earlier, submit your application in Sydney, and then go out and travel. So we actually talk to you with your sort of personal goals and travel plans in mind. And that's a real benefit as well for having that call earlier rather than later. We do sometimes have people say, hey, I'm leaving next month. And that's great. We can still support you, but it might mean that you need to adjust your expectations in that case. So if you do have time up your sleeve and you're able to book in a call earlier rather than later, we can make sure that you can sort of reach your travel goals and in a timely way get your teaching registration. If you are one of those people who are like, oh no, that's me, I'm leaving next week, that's great. Tell us straight away so we can prioritize your call and get as much as we can achieve before you leave happening straight away. So do just sort of keep that in mind. If you're still like not sure about when you want to go and you're on the fence, just book in that call so we can sort of chat through the options with you.
Absolutely. It's nice to have a sounding board as well when you're making those plans. So we're happy to be that for you as well. And another thing I will mention, I know that we kind of talked about this earlier with the New Zealand working holiday visa. Um, I think a big misconception around the working holiday visa is that once you have applied and have had it granted, that it's active straight away, and that is not the case. So they do ask for an estimated start date. You're not kind of stuck to that either. Your actual date of entry is when you land in Australia or New Zealand for that first time. That's when it's activated. So if you apply for your working holiday visa in July, then you have until the July next year to actually enter the country. Whenever you enter is when it is activated. So do keep that in mind as well, because I know some people get nervous saying the visa needs to be granted so that they can submit their state registration, but they don't want to do it too soon because they don't want to run out of time. That's not the case. You're not going to run out of time on your visa as well.
Alrighty, so let's look at some of those different work options that we have available. So if you are somebody who has a qualification in early childhood, there are several different sort of levels of qualification and types of roles that you can work in early childhood. But it's really essential that you've got experience with the ages of 5 and below, and especially with toddlers and babies. So make sure that you have that sort of recent experience there in early childhood and a qualification related to early childhood for those opportunities. We also have teaching opportunities. I know we've discussed that quite a bit today, but primary and secondary. So primary, we're looking at the ages of 5 through to like 11, and secondary 11 or 12 through to 18. We do also have opportunities for support staff, but specifically in Melbourne with SEN TA roles. And then if you're heading out towards Sydney, we do have OSH, which is out of school hours care roles. So that looks like before and after school as well. And then, of course, if you are somebody with a lot of really fantastic experience under your belt, we do also have executive opportunities. Alrighty. Possibly one of my favorite things about ANZUK, we have a lot of different types of support and resources to offer our educators. So one of those things we send out after our call is different blogs with the tips for the state registrations, so that after we've talked through the application and you're sitting there, and when you come time to actually doing it yourself, you'll have this blog to help you so that you don't have to just memorize everything we talked about. And that will step out all the different types of documentations you need, the dates and specifically any time frames as well to take note of, and they step out the actual process for applying for those registrations. We also give you area guides so that in each part of Australia or in each city in Australia or New Zealand, you can see where we recommend for you to live, because there's good schools are in those areas, there's good public transport and other sort of facilities there for when you are making the move. So all of that will help with you planning your journey across. We also give you a Teach in Australia info pack. We've got monthly webinars such as this one, as well as in-person events. So some of you I know went to our recent A County Down Under events with the fabulous Caroline McKenna. But we also have social events too for our educators. A lot of the time that looks like summer parties, maybe different sort of socials to make sure that you're meeting other like-minded educators that are in the same position as you in the city that you're staying in. And it's a great way to make friends, meet your future housemates, possibly, maybe meet people that have already done the regional work if that's something that you're interested in and looking into doing. And it's just such a great way to sort of get really oriented in your new city. And then my favorite, the last two, Growth Hub is our online learning platform, and we've got everything on there. So the first part is really exciting, can help you get classroom ready with micro learning and professional development opportunities, especially for those of you that are interested in the differences between, the curriculum here and the curriculum in Australia, especially to learn about Indigenous perspectives. It's something that we embed in every subject at every level of schooling. So that's a really important one there as well. But we've also got stuff there to help you with your life admin and just to be life ready in Australia. Things like the taxes and all that kind of stuff. And those videos are made by other educators such as yourself that have made the journey before you, and they are there to make sure that you know what they didn't know when they arrived. So that's a really lovely platform there, and you get access to that before you even go. So once that travel plan has been created, you'll get an email that you can use to log in, and you can have a nice little explore before you even go to Australia. And then, of course, I know Corey's mentioned this, but it's worth mentioning again, that 360 support. So if you're in Australia and you're thinking about coming home and you want help with finding an opportunity back home and with making that move, we're there for you. If you're thinking about continuing on and maybe helping across the border and going into New Zealand, we can also support you there. So that real 360 sort of movement. If you're from Canada or America and you were teaching in Oz and now you want to go to the UK, we have a team for that as well. So we can really help you not only to go there, but also in your return journey on the way home.
Fantastic. Yeah, I think the team in Australia has, I think, term by term events for international educators, local educators. You can meet the whole mix. Plenty of people who are in the same kind of experience as you, also a ton of locals to meet as well. So lots going on. Amazing. So the kind of overview of the process of working through ANZUK UK, how we actually get you from this meeting and this kind of session today often in a classroom in Australia or New Zealand. So first things first, I know we keep mentioning this, but have your initial call with one of our global team members. That would be myself, Jasmine, or one of our other lovely ladies in London as well. We're going to talk through just an idea of your plans, what your timeline is, again, kind of guiding you towards the right time of year to get there or whatever works best for you as well. We're going to make sure that we have everything on track, and once you have a kind of firm location in mind and you've kind of started certain steps of the process like visas or whatever you might need that way, then we also pass your details on to the team in Australia. So you'd have a local contact from whichever location in Australia that you are going to, or New Zealand. And they are going to go through more of what to expect when you actually arrive. So they're going to be your point of contact for when you get there. You can go into the office, meet them in person. So you'll have support from both ends of the process to get you over there in one piece. On the compliance side, we do obviously help you with completing your teaching registration and making sure you are all set on that side of things. We also do references for you as well. So we would complete those on your behalf before you do go off and make sure that everything kind of meets the standards of the Australian compliance requirements. Now, once you've actually gotten to Australia, you are going to have an in-person registration confirmed with the team as well. So they are going to have meetings set up with you so that you can, kind of tick all the boxes, go through anything like tax file numbers and all the fun life admin bits, and make sure that everything is sorted. At that point, you will be clear for work. So we've ticked all the boxes. Your registration is back from your state registration. All of your references are done, everything that we needed, all done and sorted. and you are ready to go, we send you off into the classroom as soon as we can after that. It might be the next day, or it might be the beginning of a contract at the beginning of the term. So whatever is kind of your dream role, and you'll be off and teaching in no time.
Awesome. So that's a wrap for us. If you've got any questions, make sure to put them in the chat. I haven't seen anything pop up just yet. So hopefully that means we've done a really great job of already answering your questions. But look, if you do have questions there and they're more of a personal nature, make sure you do book in with us. So look out for that follow-up information and we'll make sure that we can answer those questions there for you.
And if you ever lose track of our email as well, you can always just find our information at ANZUK Education online. So we do have a website with inquiry forms. You can always fill those out in the future. You can email our team and it will still be one of us getting you sorted. So it'll always come back to us. Don't stress about that. Do reach out whenever works best for you. But we are going to send you all of our links, book in a call earlier than you think you need to, and we'll get you sorted as soon as we can. I'm going to stop
Alrighty.
sharing for a minute here so I can see these questions as well.
Okay, so we've got some questions popping up. Yes, this webinar is recorded and we will be sending out a recording there to everybody who participated today. And now I've got another question here. Do we support teachers moving from the UK to the USA? So we actually do have teams in the US and in Canada, but we support those educators going towards Australia. So at the moment, we don't have opportunities for UK teachers going to the US or to Canada.
Yeah. I did see another quick question over in the Q&A as well. For support staff, if you are going over as a teaching assistant, you do not need to complete a state registration. So that is actually a really fantastic question. You would have to complete a working with children check in whichever state you're going to. Only adds about a week or two of processing time though. So once you land, apply for your check, and you can be off within 2 weeks of getting there. So really great question. I will also say if you're early childhood, there is another application to do altogether, which can take a little bit longer. So if you are an early childhood educator, talk to us early because there are definitely some more steps to add in there as well.
Alrighty, I've got a question here. If you've previously done 1 year working holiday visa in Australia, are you still able to go? So that will really depend on what passport you hold. If you are a UK passport holder, you can get up to 3 years on the working holiday visa, depending on your age. Now, if you are an Irish passport holder, that will depend on whether or not you have done your regional work and on your age. So it will really depend there. So really worth you doing your due diligence. You can speak to a migration agent, or you might be able to find the information that you need on the Australian government website.
Amazing. I did see a question as well for people aged 45 and older. It does depend on the type of working rights that you are able to obtain. Again, we are not migration agents. We are not able to actually give you direct advice on the types of visas that you would be able to obtain yourself. But I would say Visa Go Australia are fantastic migration agents. We do also have a webinar recording with them. I would highly recommend going to our YouTube channel, checking that one out as well, or going onto their website and speaking with them directly. If you're able to get those working rights independently, then absolutely we can get you sorted. I do think that there is a visa option that's up to 55 if you're going to New Zealand though. So keep that in mind as well. Might not be Australia. New Zealand might be the one for you instead.
Alrighty, so somebody asking here as well if you can go out to Australia and initially be a teaching assistant and then later register to be a teacher. So if I'm understanding that question correctly, if you are a teacher and you already are qualified to be a teacher, you of course can be registered as a teaching assistant and then later on choose to get teaching registration if you fulfill those requirements. So some people may prefer to head on out there and be a teaching assistant rather than a teacher. That's of course totally fine. It's up to you. But just make sure that when we're having that chat with you, that you're really clear about the type of work that you're interested in there as well.
And as a requirement for those teaching assistant opportunities, you do have to have child-related work experience in particular, but we do see a lot more schools requiring educators having SEN-specific experience wherever possible. Obviously, if you're arriving between kind of April and September when it's a little bit busier, there might be more mainstream roles available, but the vast majority of opportunities are within SEN-specific settings, and they really like to see educators who already have experience with students with higher needs so that they can kind of ease into those roles as quickly as possible.
And along with that, to be a teaching assistant, you don't need to have tertiary education, but you do need to have that recent teaching, school-based or child-based references.
Now, I have seen a couple questions regarding sponsorship. There are occasional opportunities that do come up for sponsorship. I know the kind of government websites still really bang on about sponsorship being readily available, but I will say that the climate in Australia has shifted over the last couple of years. There isn't as much of a kind of urgency that they had about 3 years ago for sponsored educators. They do still have roles that come up from time to time, especially if you are a STEM-based educator. And we do actually host drives with certain schools to have you come and meet some of the staff, the senior leadership, and there are potential opportunities for those to come up in the future. But I would say that we do highly recommend looking into your own visa opportunities as well. It's always safer to know what you're applying for and know that you have control over your own visa. Does just make it a little bit easier in the long run.
Alrighty, I've seen some questions as well about the qualifications needed for early years educators. So you must make sure that you still meet, especially if you're going to be an early years teacher, that you still meet the requirements for teaching registration in Australia, as well as having a specific qualification that focuses on educating children the ages of 5 and below, and you have had experience in working with children in those age groups as well in your practice teaching, your supervised placements. So make sure you do sort of chat to us. We always look through qualifications together to see if you are eligible for both early years and primary, which can be quite common. Depending on what your qualification is. So make sure as well that when we have that chat, you've provided us with your CV and you are really clear about the qualifications that you have. And if you're not quite sure, maybe bringing those certificates as well to that online call so that we can sort of see and look at that with you.
Absolutely. A big indicator for early childhood in Australia, they're assessed by ANZUK. It's a national registration in Australia. They do really look at having placement experience with the ages of 0 through 3 during your qualifications. That's a really big factor. If you didn't do placement with those age ranges, it might not directly qualify as being early years in Australia, but we can, again, like Jasmine said, have a call with us, provide that CV, and we'll talk through it a little bit more specifically.
Alrighty, and there's a question here as well. With senior leadership positions, are you still required to move schools after 6 months on the working holiday visa? The answer is yes. The working holiday visa, you must make sure that you're not in breach of your visa, and that stipulation there is for all visa holders with the working holiday visa. So a lot of our senior leadership positions are more likely to go towards somebody that has a visa that allows them to work for a year or ongoing in roles. Of course, there may be some contracts that come up that are for a set amount of time. So I'm thinking sometimes maternity leave contracts that may be sort of 6 months or shorter that you might be eligible for. But do keep in mind that that 6 month rule is a migration rule, a visa rule.
Now, there is also a question about ATSL and how that transfers over to New Zealand. I do believe, unfortunately, that ATSL is specifically for Australia. There are different requirements around kind of pre-assessment and English assessments and all of that that goes into a New Zealand visa registration and obviously teaching registration as well. So I would say for that one, just be aware that there are going to be separate ones. They are two different countries, so they do have different rules and regulations and bodies that they go through as well.
Alrighty. Do you need a lot of experience for primary teaching in Australia, or is it okay if you are newly qualified and has experience through placement? We actually do get so many newly qualified teachers. Just make sure that you've done your research about how long you have to do your NQT year or your ECT years, depending on where you're based.
Or your dry heads if
Because
you're in Ireland.
of course, yes. So make sure that you've done your research about that so that you understand the time frame that you have in which to complete that. In Australia, it's not necessary that you have done your NQT year or your ECT years, it's provided you have graduated from your courses and you meet the registration requirements in Australia. So even if you are just starting out, you can, of course, if you are eligible to be registered as a teacher, then also teach in Australian classrooms. So we really would welcome if you're an NQT teacher and you've just recently graduated or you're about to graduate and you're wanting to sort of plan ahead, absolutely get in contact with us and you can sort of plan your first few teaching years in Australia. How exciting.
Fantastic. We did also get a question here about a 3-year primary teaching degree, which is one that comes up quite a bit. So unfortunately, as an outright rule, the 3-year degree does not typically meet the state registration requirements. They do require that you have 4 years of tertiary study, so bachelor's level and above, to be able to meet the requirements. Now, if you do have a 3-year BEd in primary and a 1-year in whatever else, that does actually meet the requirement. They don't have to be all 4 years towards education. So there are different workarounds. But I would say still worth having a conversation with us. On occasion, New Zealand can take certain registrations that might be 3 years, but there's definitely some very strict stipulations. So I would say have a call with us and we can kind of work that out directly.
So there's a question here as well with regards to timelines. So is it possible to line up a 1-year contract to start at the end of term 1 in Sydney, but only leave the UK in December? So going back to our discussion about getting registered in Sydney, it can take up to 8 weeks after you've received your Working with Children's check, which can take up to 2. And all government agencies will close over the Christmas and New Year's period. So you must allow enough time for yourself to have that registration approved before starting work in a role. So in all likelihood, without having a teaching registration, it's quite unlikely to then be offered a contract because you're not eligible yet to teach in Australia, so or in Sydney specifically. So it's really important that when you have that call with us that we discuss that sort of timeline that you have in mind and your goals to make sure that you are able to then start in a contract when you are heading out to Sydney.
If it is at the end of term 1, I think you might have put that in there. If it's going to be in that kind of April time, if you're going to start in term 2 after Easter, arriving in December would give you plenty of time to get settled. But just be aware of what the start dates are. They're quite easy to find online as well. If you want to put in the state start dates, New South Wales is going to have a different start date to Victoria. So just keep that in mind as well. And what are the chances of obtaining a visa with an EU passport or EU visa? I'm not quite sure what that one is. And qualifications from England. It is possible. There are working holiday visa types for European passport holders, so those are available. They're going to have more similar working restrictions to potentially Ireland, where you might only have a year outright, and then if you want to extend it, you'd have to do regional work. So there are options available for you as well, as long as you can obtain those working rights yourself and you're able to meet the registration requirements with your qualifications, then you would be good to go.
Alrighty, and there's a great question here about renting as well. So if you go on a casual contract, will the opportunities be in the same area so you can have a permanent renting contract for housing? Look, a lot of our educators go out and initially they will have some kind of short-term rental, whether that's with Airbnb or subletting, that kind of situation first, especially if they are doing sort of day-to-day supply before they, figure out which area they prefer living in or how long a commute is, how close you need to be to stations and things. So I would really recommend actually being in Australia, being in the city that you want to teach in before accepting any kind of long-term rental agreement. And of course, even on day-to-day supply, with us, even doing CRT, we can write a letter of employment, which will help support you in getting a rental sort of down the track, so that you can, prove that you do have an income and a role with us. So we do definitely offer support with that, as well as advice as to which areas are really good for work opportunities, and all of that there will sort of go into supporting you finding, the right housing situation for yourself when you're in Oz.
Absolutely. And most of our educators do stay in one place for, 6 months, a year, longer sometimes as well, and do casual work the whole time. Our team will always try and base you as close as possible to home. And if they need to, they'll expand from that bubble up until your kind of max limit of whatever you set as your preference. We do say be aware that it could be up to an hour commute based on where you are based. But as a kind of a rule of thumb, base yourself close to a train station and you can get anywhere in the city. It makes it a lot more accessible. So we will kind of help you work around that as well.
Okay, I think that's about all for today, but it's
Yeah.
been an absolute pleasure to have you along with us for this webinar. And don't forget, it is recorded and it will be sent out to you as well. So if there's anything there that you need to revisit, make sure that you do sort of check out that link there and book in a call with us. Hopefully we'll be chatting to you sort of face to face again soon.
Thank you so much for joining. Enjoy your evening. Bye.
Bye bye.